At number 10, we have Superboy from Superboy Annual 1996. In a distant future, the Superboy mantle is taken up by a being named Quetzal, who comes from the planet Aztlan. And instead of the classic origin story, this future world gives the title of Superman to those selected as champions by the god Quetzalcoatl, which is basically a giant flying snake that seems to be based on an ancient religious text from Aztec culture, but that's just how Superman gets his name. Superboy is the apprentice to that champion known as Superman in this storyline. He's pretty short-lived, naturally only lasting the one annual issue, but he's got a cool new costume design and has a different cultural background than the Superboy we're used to, which is interesting to see. At number 9, we have Superman from Superman Man of Steel Annual 1996. Side note, in case you didn't already know, there was a crossover spanning through all of the DC annuals in 1996 called Legends of Dead Earth, which framed DC stories in a dystopian future. So it was a good year for a list like this. Regardless, in this future, a future version of Lex Luthor is leader of the Galactic Empire and is systematically destroying all planets that show potential to foster the birth of new Supermen. But as he's preparing to destroy a planet called Hydros, a rebel force sneaks onto the planet and saves its only remaining survivor, Caleb. Once he leaves the planet, he's able to absorb the radiation from a nearby star and becomes the new Superman of that time. At number 8, we have All-Star Superman. Now, this Superman is part of a completely different continuation of that which comic book fans have been following. Known to generally take place around the pre-crisis continuity, this alternate continuation goes on into a distant future during the course of the 12-issue maxi series. And it follows the adventure of a Superman who is facing death at the hands of Lex Luthor, who gives him a fatal dose of solar radiation. And with his remaining time in existence, he decides to carry out a number of tasks, including creating Earth Q, which refers to the real timeline that we're used to, and repairing the sun as well, which he does by flying right into it, sacrificing himself in the process. This version of the hero is back to basics. He comes off as very simple and relaxed in his demeanor, without the burdens of past traumatic adventures from the current timeline. At number 7 is the Superman from Last Night on Earth. In this Elseworld future, the world is in a very dark place as a result of global warming, and Lex Luthor and Superman are debating over good and evil, with a very brutal consequence on the line for the losing party: getting impaled by kryptonite. And the judges who choose the winner? All of humanity, of course. And although it appears that Superman has won the debate by the end, humanity chooses to impale Superman instead of Lex Luthor, leaving him, well, dead. The following events take place as a result of his death and is largely considered more of a Batman storyline, but for a time there we catch a glimpse of yet another futuristic version of Superman, one who chooses to use his words over his fists, I guess. At number 6, we have Mon-El, aka Lar Grand, from the Legion of Superheroes. This guy is sort of veering towards being a knockoff version of Superman, since he's known to be a superhero inspired by Superboy, who is himself already a copy of Superman in a way. Either way, this futuristic version of the hero is actually vulnerable to lead instead of kryptonite and is sent to the Phantom Zone by Superboy when he's fatally poisoned. A lot of Supermen being poisoned in this list, I'm realizing. Future's not so bright. Either way, he's put into the Phantom Zone for his own protection, but when a 30th century version of Brainiac, Brainiac 5, finds a cure to his poisoning, Mon-El returns and becomes a member of the Legion of Superheroes, and actually takes Superboy's place in his future timeline.
Number 5. Dark Knight Returns. This is an older version of Bruce from Frank Miller's alternate future reality of Earth 31. Here Batman comes out of retirement when Harvey Dent returns. To make matters worse, the Joker also escapes custody. Not only does Batman have Dent, the Joker, and the criminal scum of Gotham to contend with, but Superman is also after him as well. In this reality, Superman had become a government hero, becoming the loyal ally to the President of the United States. Kind of like his guard dog, really. And the President of the United States does not take too kindly to Batman's return. In the end, the two must face off in a famous fight that would go on to inspire multiple narratives, including the Batman v Superman film from the DCEU. Number 4. Damian Wayne. One of the darkest Batmen to arise would be Damian Wayne's Batman. Damian takes up the cape and cowl in a possible future story featured in Batman issue 666, Get it? 666. Known as Batman in Bethlehem. Batman in Bethlehem is a story where in the future, Damian Wayne sells his soul to Satan in order to ensure Gotham's protection. This drastic measure happens in a world where people really are looking for some kind of security as climate change, war, and acts of terror threaten the entire planet, turning it into a hellish futuristic landscape. This future version of Damian, who becomes Batman, also seems to be impervious to gunfire and no longer restrains himself from killing those who oppose him. Kinda like my dad was here so that I could be this Batman later. I feel like Daddy Batman would not be too happy with you, Damian. He would be like, don't kill people, but you're gonna do what you're gonna do. I guess it's a different world. Number 3, Thomas Wayne. Although it might seem weird to put Thomas Wayne on this list as he's Batman's father and so in a way is part of his past, in the alternate future known as Flashpoint, Thomas actually becomes Batman instead of Bruce. This is after Bruce is killed, causing Thomas to make a plan to get vengeance and inspiring him to become a vigilante fighting for justice on the streets of Gotham. Martha, however, kinda goes the opposite way with it. The death of Bruce causes her to basically go insane. Unable to move on or let go, she ends up haunted by his memory and becomes the villain known as the Joker, becoming Thomas's sworn nemesis, despite the love that they once shared. What a tragic story. Number 2, Dick Grayson. Helena isn't the only one to carry on Batman and Catwoman's legacy on Earth 2. Let's not forget that before Helena was born, Batman had an adoptive son in the boy wonder known as Robin, aka Dick Grayson, often known as the original Robin across many different worlds. On Earth 2, Dick Grayson would end up taking his adoptive father's mantle before Helena did and operate as Batman for a time. He settles down with Barbara Gordon and the two even have a son together who they name John. Dick, however, loses the use of his legs when he becomes paralyzed by the Joker shooting him through the stomach, which damages his spine. Sound familiar? Dick would later become Oracle. In this reality, Barbara ends up as a cop who gets shot and dies while attempting to help her family flee Darkseid's invasion. Their son John grows up to become his Aunt Helena's sidekick Robin. Super cute. I like it. Not Babs' death though. I don't like that. That's not nice. Number 1, Terry McGinnis. When it comes to Batman, there are actually a lot of people who would be suited to don the cape and cowl. Sometimes in his stead, and other times as those who would take up the mantle after he dies or he retires. In the case of Terry McGinnis, he was pretty much created to become the new Batman. Using Bruce's own DNA, Amanda Waller designed Terry as part of her project Batman Beyond. She basically overwrote the reproductive DNA of Terry's father and chose the McGinnis family to create the modern genetic Bruce Wayne duplicate because their psychological profiles were close matches to Bruce's own parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, which means that, when Terry grows up he should be pretty much a perfect replica. Even more so if his parents had been assassinated like Amanda wanted, but didn't work out for Waller there. Probably for the best though. I don't think you should assassinate people's parents just to turn them into Batman. That seems pretty messed up, even for Amanda Waller.
Number 10, Hulk 2099. This is the only Hulk on this list that is not a Bruce Banner. No, this version of the Hulk is a guy named John Eisenhart. He was a corporate lawyer for big movie studios who went to manipulate a group called the Knights of Banner, who were a cult-like group of warriors who followed the ideologies of Bruce Banner. John was going to gain the rights for their name in order to make a movie about them, all while giving them nothing in return. He turns them into this corporation called Sweet Dreams, thinking they'll be brought in peacefully, but it doesn't go that way. The only Knight of Banner who survives, a kid, goes to a gamma machine, but John saves the kid, pushing him out of the way and being blasted with gamma radiation. John can turn into the Hulk whenever he wants. He has a super strong prehensile tongue, and he is much more beast-like with massive claws. He is just as powerful as the regular Hulk, but unfortunately, his comics were not popular enough to last more than 12 issues. Maybe he'll get a resurgence, I don't know. And at number 9, it's Age of Apocalypse Hulk. A world where the megalomaniacal apocalypse rose to power and mutants rule mercilessly while humans are treated like cattle. This version of Bruce Banner originally betrayed mankind, but after his experiments turned him into the Hulk, he fought for humans once again. This version of the Hulk starts off as the Grey Hulk, but is referred to as Thing until he saves Tony Stark, Gwen Stacy, and Victor Von Doom from a gamma nuke that he created that inadvertently goes off, forcing his transformation from Grey to Green Hulk. Now this guy is pretty much an equal to his normal 616 self, but once Weapon X becomes the ruler of this Earth, this Hulk is able to go toe to toe with him, shrugging off attacks and giving a hell of a fight for the crazy powerful mutant. And at number 8, Zombie Hulk. Marvel Zombies isn't really a future story. It sort of becomes one, but it isn't when it starts. Time is relative, so look. Basically, in the story, eventually the zombie Galacti, as in those zombified heroes who consumed the Silver Surfer and Galactus and gained the power cosmic, travel out into the universe and begin consuming worlds and galaxies. So much so that they consume everything until nothing is left. As you can imagine, that's the kind of thing that may take a while. Long enough to be considered the future? I shall allow you to debate below. This Hulk was a lead consumer in the team of cosmically powered zombie superheroes and villains. So much so that when they ran out of people to consume, zombie Thanos blamed Hulk for eating more than his fair share, to which zombie Hulk decided he had enough of Thanos and put him out of commission. Number 7. Lizard Hulk. In the alternate future of the Spider Island story, the whole of New York City has been taken over by a villain known as the Spider Queen. The Spider Queen has infected almost all inhabitants of the city, including all of the heroes, with a virus that turns them into mindless spider zombie-like slaves under her control. Luckily, there's a group of heroes who make a resistance to this villainous Spider Queen. Most notable among them would be Eugene Flash Thompson, or Agent Venom. Agent Venom eventually realizes that if he subjects some of these spider hybrid heroes to a different DNA tampering process, like for example the lizard serum or even the green goblin serum, that it will override the spider transformation, effectively curing the patients. When a group of spider heroes, including the Spider Hulk, attack Agent Venom, he injects the Spider Hulk with the lizard serum, effectively turning him into a more giant and muscular lizard Hulk. He got a tail, he got sharp teeth, he got scales, he a lizard Hulk, baby! Number 6. Intelligent Design God Hulk from What If Planet Hulk. Most comic book readers, and especially fans of Marvel and the Hulk, know of the storyline where the Illuminati banished the Hulk from Earth to send him to another planet. He ended up crash landing on Sakaar and becoming a gladiator turned liberator turned ruler of the planet until his ship self-destructed, killing his family and bringing him back to Earth with a vengeance that no guilty person was safe from. What If Planet Hulk ends up asking the question, what if the Illuminati's banishment had hit its original target? In this story, Hulk lands on an incredibly peaceful and serene planet. And sure, he goes a bit ragey at first, but he eventually realizes the planet is inhabited by a race of peaceful creatures. Over long periods of time, the Hulk helps this race to evolve and become a thriving civilization. They end up viewing the Hulk as their god, and he basically acts as one that leads them to wealth and prosperity. It's one of the few Hulk stories that doesn't end in tears, and I'm more than happy to talk about it for that reason alone.
Number 5. Old Head Deadpool. This alternate version of Deadpool comes from the Wastelanders or Old Man Logan reality of Earth 807-128. Here, Deadpool appears to have survived the uprising of supervillains, destruction of the Earth, and post-apocalyptic setting of this continuity. At least, his head did. We see him as a head in a jar in Wastelanders Hawkeye, where he is kept in a bar that Juggernaut frequents, and is potentially the boss of? Although he no longer has a body, this merc still has kept his mouth, and still uses it to crack wise at almost any opportunity that presents itself. Number 4. Deadpool 2099. Deadpool 2099 is Werda Wilson, the daughter of Shikla and Deadpool. While in 2099, Deadpool also exists, although it is actually Werda who holds her father hostage, along with Emily Preston, the adoptive mother of Eleanor Preston, who is also Deadpool's daughter. Werda kidnaps them both in hopes of finding out what happened to her mother, Shikla, who basically went missing. While she is the daughter of Deadpool, Wade never really knew about her until then because Shikla and Deadpool split up before she was born, and Shikla basically decided to keep Werda's existence a secret from Wade. Like her dad, this future legacy version of Deadpool, Werda Wilson, also has a healing factor. Number 3. Legacy Deadpool. Deadpool has more than one daughter actually. He also has Ellie Camacho, also known in this future as Eleanor Preston. She is the adopted daughter of Deadpool and Emily Preston in the future of Earth 16356, the same reality that Werda is also existing in. Here Ellie ends up manifesting immortality powers, with her basically regenerating upon her death, being reborn with all of her prior memories, but basically reset to look as she did when her powers first manifested. In other words, she becomes a teenager physically again, and then grows from there whenever she dies. Ellie has always been one of my favorites when it comes to heroes kids out there, and although I loved Shikla and Deadpool together, I have always preferred Ellie to their daughter, Werda. Ellie takes up her father's mantle and is known by the codename Deadpool in this reality. Deadpool Ellie goes on to fight against her half-sister, Deadpool Werda, in the future, who is also of course known as Deadpool 2099, one of them. Number 2. Future X-Men. During Battle of the Atom, a future Deadpool appears as part of the Future X-Men team. He is there in an attempt to send the all-new X-Men, or past X-Men, back to their time, convincing them to return, where they belong. This alternate version of Wade also seems to be a fan of Gold Balls. He claims in the future that Gold Ball's apparently a legend and asks for his autograph, though I don't know if we know if he's joking. In reality, the X-Men team that he is a part of is not really a future X-Men team, but is instead a future Brotherhood of Evil Mutants team, ha ha ha, led by the evil son of Professor X and Mystique, Charles Xavier II, and the evil son of Wolverine and Mystique, Reyes. Number 1. Days of Future Past. Deadpool managed to retcon an old future version of himself into Days of Future Past, and appears in Cosmic Ghost Rider's story where he himself is doing some meddling in the future timeline, which for him is currently the past. Does that make sense? Or have I lost you yet? I feel like time travel, we lose everyone at some point. Still, Cosmic Ghost Rider decides to call it the future to simplify, so I think it's fair that we do so too. Here, Deadpool appears to have somehow become the leader of the X-Men. His original plan was to send Kitty Pryde back in time, but when Cosmic Ghost Rider steals the valuable jammer component she was meant to transport to help prevent the bleak dystopian future, Deadpool decides to send Cosmic Ghost Rider back in time instead. This all goes down in the series Cosmic Ghost Rider Destroys Marvel History in issue number 3. What is your favorite future alternate version of Deadpool? Do you like when Deadpool gets all timey-wimey with his alternates, or do you just prefer when they are just from alternate worlds and have just distinct differences, like Lady Deadpool, or Evil Deadpool, or Panda Deadpool? Panda Pool?
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Abracadabra. AKA Citizen Abra, he began his magical days as a Flash villain, first appearing in comics in The Flash issue 128. He's from the future, of course, like most of these guys are, but it's a future where, sadly, magic shows aren't a thing anymore. Yeah, sorry David Blaine, gotta get a new job. He's from the 64th century, and technology has become so advanced that pulling a rabbit out of a hat just simply won't cut it anymore. I heard about the time machine powered by M-metal, he just had to get his glittery magician hands on it. It was only capable of one trip, so Abra snuck into the laboratory and shot back in time to the 20th century where magicians were still celebrities, like Chris Angel or David Blaine or David Copperfield or, the other ones. He would use technology from his timeline well beyond what we're capable of and then blow our minds in these magic shows. The shows were going well at first until people got bored, then they were actually more interested in this new statue being built in town, so he figured the next logical way of getting attention was to start stealing things, starting with this fancy new statue. He kept stealing, and he kept stealing after that, and he kept using his future tech to evade capture, so when it comes to magicians, Abracadabra is very committed to the craft, in the future or the past. Number 9, Gore, the God Butcher. The God Butcher will be played by Christian Bale in the upcoming Thor Love and Thunder sequel, and yes, he is a time-traveling menace as well. He made his first appearance in Thor God of Thunder issue 2. He was born on a planet with no name, which is always a great sign. Gore lost his parents when he was very young, and he was told to pray to these gods, because they would always make things better, these glorious gods. And then after getting a wife and son, death kept looming over, and he lost both of them as well. Really tragic stuff. So now he's a little bit more than upset at these gods. He wants them to answer or to pay, one of the two. With the all-black Necrosword powers, he heads out for revenge on these gods, but in the past. He would use the Pool of Forever to travel back in time and make these attacks happen. He would use the Pool of Forever to go back in time and then attack all these gods when they were babies, right? So it took different versions of Thor from different timelines just to put a stop to Gore the God Butcher. So with this new Thor movie coming out, including Natalie Portman, Mjolnir, Lady Sif, I feel like it's going to be a cosmic headache and do some time stuff in there as well. But in Taika, we trust. It's kind of like when Rhodey suggested getting rid of Thanos when he was younger by, Gore the God Butcher is basically that mentality, but 10 times worse. And with powers. Number 8, Timothy Drake. The Red Robin, aka Tim Drake, first entered comics in Batman 436. He was a young boy who saw the Flying Graysons show live in person. He even received kind words from Dick Grayson, and Dick dedicated that act to Tim that night. How lovely. Now, of course, this was moments before Dick's parents, John and Mary, tragically died during this act. A night Tim would never forget, especially when he witnessed the Cape Crusader himself, Batman, consoling Dick Grayson afterwards. So years later, when Tim was 9, it was Batman and Robin taking down the Penguin, and Robin did this quadruple somersault, the only flip that could be performed by a Grayson, and then he connected the dots. He's like, oh, so you're him and you're him. Got it. Tim followed them around for a while, and then after Jason's death, Tim suited up himself as the third Robin. But in the Titans Tomorrow storyline, we see the Teen Titans travel to the 31st century to assist the Legion of Superheroes, and when they return, they accidentally end up 10 years in their future. So they meet older, darker future versions of themselves, including Timothy Drake, now going by Savior. This version of Tim is ruthless. He even carries around with him Joe Chill's gun to help get the job done. So when the team gets back to their real timeline, they swear to never become their dark counterparts and they split up. But, like I said earlier, this split up is actually what ends up causing the dark versions of themselves to happen in the first place. Time! You can't mess with time. That's it. The Titans Tomorrow storyline is definitely one you need to check out. We love dark, evil versions of our heroes. We can't get enough of them. Number 7, Ultron. The Avengers Age of Ultron storyline is a lot better than the MCU's version of that. The comic Age of Ultron has better time travel stuff than the movie Endgame does, honestly. I mean, Wolverine goes back in time, he tries to kill Hank Pym so that Ultron's never created, but while he's there, he has to talk to other Avengers who are also back in time on a different mission. It's wild. It's a great time. It starts off with New York City in ruins. Spider-Man is zipping around the city. All these heroes are missing or they're dead. And the only way for the city to survive this apocalypse is by offering superheroes to Ultron, who just rules everything. So She-Hulk and Luke Cage are amongst these survivors, and they have the plans basically to just go in willingly, and then once they're inside, they're gonna break everything apart because they're super strong. But then when they get there, it's not even Ultron that's running the show, it's actually Vision. The Vision is being used as a conduit from future Ultron, so he's safe, you can't just go and punch him and then everything's fine. He's in the future, he's safe, he knows what's gonna happen. We're kind of screwed. We can't punch our way out of this. We have Ultron already on top. Ultron is actually barely in this story, funny enough, but the stakes start off raised, so you feel anxious the entire time reading it. It's a great time travel story. Definitely check it out. Number 6, Reverse Flash. Eobard Thawne made his debut in Flash issue 139, titled The Black Flash. He was the OG Reverse Flash. He was born in 2451 when his parents genetically engineered him, because that's the thing you do in the future, and you can engineer your kids to look and be funny and cute, I guess. Okay, cool. But he lacked the social skills in this time to make his parents truly proud, so they decided, you know what, another son may be the key. A new best friend, great idea, you know, they can pair up and talk and be friends and stuff. Okay, cool. I grew up with siblings, I get it. That second son's name was Robert. He spent so much time trying to keep an eye on Robert and to make his parents proud and to like babysit him, that down the road his application to study the Speed Force at the Flash Museum was rejected. He was too busy, couldn't even study. So he studied it illegally. But he was caught by his brother, who is now an officer in the Science Police. This guy is interesting and a little confusing. So a future version of Eobard traveled through time and prevented his brother from being born, and then he was able to study and was in turn this time around admitted to the Flash Museum. Great. But then when Professor Drake was on the verge of proving the existence of the Speed Force, Eobard has trained his whole life for this, so he wanted to collab, but Drake said no. He wanted to do it solo. So he traveled back in time again and eliminated Professor Drake from the equation. So next time around, there's no Drake, there's no problem. Now Eobard is the professor at the Flash Museum and was nicknamed Professor Zoom. Reverse Flash is responsible for the death of Barry Allen's mother and his wife Iris West. He just rips timelines and the Flash's life to pieces. That's his whole thing.
Number 5, Iron Man 2099. There are actually multiple Iron Man 2099s out there, but one of the most well-known ones is Dr. Sonny Frisco, who first appeared in the 2015 Secret Wars event, making his very first appearance in Secret Wars 2099 issue number 1. While 2099 is a future reality that has been around for some time in the comics, Dr. Sonny Frisco wouldn't appear until later in its continuity. Or a continuity, really. This also, once again, is not the main 2099 continuity. In fact, the 2099 reality actually has multiple different continuities. As I said, it's a lot, it's confusing, but just stick with me here. Frisco's Iron Man hails from one of the fringe continuities known as Earth 23291. Sonny Frisco, however, would later become displaced to the Realityverse 616, following the destruction and recreation of the multiverse as a result of the Secret Wars event. Like Tony Stark of Earth 616, Frisco is also a genius who built his own suit of armor and was a member of the 2099 Avengers, originally brought together by the CEO of Alchemex, Tyler Stone. At least, you know, in that alt 2099 reality. Number 4, MC2 Tony Stark. In the alternate reality of Earth 982, known as MC2, and not to be confused with the 2099 reality of Earth 928, even though those numbers are very similar, Iron Man ends up retiring. This Tony has a life similar to his 616 counterpart in most ways, with only a few differences between them. Namely, that Tony Stark in this reality decided to retire after an epic battle on an alternate Earth, which claimed the lives of many of his friends and fellow heroes, and left Scarlet Witch in a comatose state as a result of her sealing the portal between those two worlds. This devastating battle prompted Tony to retire, although he would seek out someone to carry on his legacy before doing so. Number 3. Mainframe. This is that legacy character for Tony Stark of the other main future reality for 616, known as MC2 Earth 982. Here in this reality, Tony Stark creates his own protege to carry on the Iron Man legacy, using his brain patterns or brain waves blended with an android modeled after his own armor. This android would be known as Mainframe. Mainframe was one of the original members of the MC2 Future Avengers team, editorially known as A-Next, after the name of the comic series that the team appeared in. Mainframe initially was much more by the book as a hero, pretty rigid in their ways. Over time, however, the android would learn to loosen up somewhat and even be considered a close friend to many of his heroic colleagues on the superhero team. Number 2. Andros Stark. Andros Stark is another Iron Man who hails from the 2099 reality. Not the main 2099 reality though. So many alternate timelines. This version of the alternate future Iron Man is actually Tony's grandson, Andros. Andros travels back in time in an attempt to stop his grandfather from creating Vortex. Vortex was initially created by Tony to protect humanity, but ended up turning on humankind instead, infecting the internet and threatening the existence of all human life on Earth in the future. However, in a strange twist, Andros actually ends up learning during his journey back to the past that it was his jaunt back in time that would actually result in the creation of the Vortex virus. The future crisis ends up being averted thanks to this revelation, but unfortunately it also causes Andros to cease to exist. At least this specific version of Andros who traveled back in time. There could very well still be an Andros out there somewhere in the world, one who, didn't have a reason to travel back thanks to the future being saved. This future version of Iron Man 2099 does not appear in the comics, but instead is from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. Number 1. Dr. Anthony Stark. Coming full circle now, from 10 to 1. As I said, what if Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark is not the only one out there? There's also the 2099 AD alternate future Tony Stark, who also ends up as Sorcerer Supreme, known as such or sometimes as Doctor Stranger or Dr. Anthony Stark. Although once again, although this is 2099 AD, this is not the main 2099 reality. This is another splintered continuity. This future version of Tony shows up in Infamous Iron Man when Doctor Doom, as the aforementioned infamous Iron Man, appears into the future. However, this future version of Tony would also appear initially in the 2014 all-new X-Men annual, where Tempest would run into him when she attempted to return to the reality where her husband and daughter existed. However, Stark would inform her that this reality no longer existed, and he would actually urge Tempest to return to her original timeline, the continuity of Earth 616. Number 10. Legends of the Dead Earth. In Legends of the Dead Earth, the surviving human population of Earth are all basically aboard a spaceship, which drifts kinda aimlessly through space as it's lost its heading. The humans have also been on the spaceship so long, they basically forgot there's even a world outside. However, Batman rises up among them to become a hero and help them once again find their way. This Batman is not the Batman, Bruce Wayne, but instead a well-meaning citizen on the spaceship who learns the truth about how they are basically lost. He takes up the mantle of the hero from old folklore, known as Batman, and inspires a girl aboard the ship named Tris Plover to help him in his fight to fix the ship's navigation system. It's actually a really depressing story though, because in the end she's like, man, I'm not gonna be alive to get to this planet. What's the point of anything? Number 9. Saint Batman. Saint Batman was the name Azrael took up in one of the Dark Multiverse alternate realities. Here, Azrael had taken up the cape and cowl in Batman's stead after his back was broken by Bane, but refused to give back the mantle, and instead of Batman defeating Jean-Paul and taking the mantle back, Azrael basically won that fight, keeping it. He turned Bruce into a shadow of his former self, removing all his limbs and keeping him alive through kind of a cybernetic life support thing, which also seemed to cause Bruce extreme pain. Years later, Bruce is saved by the son of Talia al Ghul and Bane. However, it turns out in rescuing Batman and later defeating Azrael, they really just swapped out one awful tyrant for an even worse one. And friends, before we head on to the next point, if you are loving this list, we would love if you headed over to our Facebook page and gave it a like and a follow. It really does help us out over here at YouTube, so Thank you. Number 6. Jace Fox. Jace becomes Batman in the possible future we get a glimpse into through DC's Future State event. In this event, Jace Fox, also known as Tim Fox, one of the children of Batman's ally Lucius Fox, ends up becoming Batman in a cyberpunk dystopian future where Gotham has become a police state. Jace is a mysterious figure but stumbles upon Batman's tech and decides to try and use it to do some good, despite the fact that at this point all masks are outlawed in Gotham. Jace Fox keeps his vigilante deeds and persona a secret from the rest of the Fox family. Many of his combat skills come from his life as a mercenary and from Katana, who he was once a protege of. Number 7. Justice League of Assassins. In the alternate future reality of Earth 14, the JLA is a little bit different. Instead of being the Justice League of America, they are known as the Justice League of Assassins, which still perfectly fits that same acronym, so yay. JLA. Like in the main reality, Batman also ends up joining this team. The world they live in seems to be a post-apocalyptic war zone when we see the JLA in issue number 15 of the 2016 Superman series. Despite their most valiant efforts, the Justice League of Assassins, including Batman, end up defeated and killed by the Prophecy. Batman actually ends up losing his head as a result of this fight. He's like the first one to go. Gets his head shot clean off. At least he still gets to finish what he was saying though. As his head pops off. Number 6. Helena Wayne. In the alternate future reality of Earth 2, it is Helena Wayne, Batman and Catwoman's daughter, who lives on to carry on the Batman legacy. Helena Wayne is often known by the name Huntress, not to be confused with Helena Bertinelli, the Huntress of the main continuity, but eventually goes on to take up her father's mantle of Batman. Yeah, not Batwoman, just Batman. Kinda love it. We haven't gotten to see too much of Helena's Batman in action, but I have always loved the idea of Catwoman and Batman settling down together and having a daughter who would one day be inspired to carry on their legacy and become a hero using either of their superhero names in their honor.
Halfway through and in number 5, Captain America 3099. Being used as a skin in the game Marvel Future Fight, Captain America 3099 is in essence Captain America, but make it RoboCop. He has a holographic shield that still actually works like a shield, but is probably one of the coolest and weirdest versions of Captain America I've ever seen. It looks really sweet, and I'd love to see someone cosplay this. Like maybe I'll be able to like grab a piece of like acrylic or something and make the shield myself, because like you can put the LEDs and stuff. It's dope. But he is after all the same old Captain America, so pretty powerful, but not as powerful as some other heroes. But I'm actually serious though, someone needs to make this shield. Whether it's the Hacksmith or Odin makes or something, I'll make this shield, okay? I will happily do my best to get the rest of the costume together, because this is like my next goal. In at 4, Old Man Logan. The dystopia in Old Man Logan is about as screwed up as it gets. It was, after all, the inspiration behind the Logan movie, if you didn't already know. The original comic run of this story was all about Logan and a blind Hawkeye traveling across a country that had been completely conquered by supervillains. Those villains included the Abomination, Magneto, Doctor Doom, and Red Skull. The other villains that appear also include a venomized T-Rex. No, I'm not kidding. And the Hulk gang, which is a whole other can of worms I don't really want to get into. Eventually though, Hulk and Logan have one final face-off, toe-to-toe, shot for shot, and Logan ends up decapitating the Hulk and then is on his way, finding a new sense of purpose, wanting to take the country back from the supervillains who took control, which is a noble yet probably lost cause, because let's be honest, would he really have won in that scenario? I don't think so. And at 3, Maestro. Speaking of the Hulk, Maestro from the Future and Perfect storyline is actually the version of Hulk present in the Old Man Logan series. First appearing in the Incredible Hulk Future and Perfect #1 from 1992, Maestro possesses Bruce Banner's intelligence and the Hulk's more malevolent personality traits. After a devastating nuclear war destroyed most of the human race, the radiation from the war ended up basically supercharging the Hulk, turning him into an even more powerful version. He then ended up violently interacting with his cousin, She-Hulk, which resulted in the birth of the Hulk gang. Yeah, I know I said I didn't want to get into it, but at this point I kind of have to explain this. This is absolutely terrifying, because while Hulk is already a freaking monster, add more radiation, more power, and the destruction of a whole country, and Bruce Banner's intelligence, there's certainly something to be scared of. Not only that, but this was in 1992. They ran this story along with the whole Hulk gang thing in 1992. Nobody would do this now, let alone 1992. That just seems like that's insane to me. Penultimately, in at number 2, Kingdom Come Superman. Yet another world where Lois Lane dies, except this time it's directly at the hands of the Joker, who had flooded the Daily Planet with his own toxin, killing everyone but Lois, who had managed to locate a gas mask. However, she tried to attack the Joker, but then Joker cracks her skull. Superman returns and Lois succumbs to her injuries and dies. As the Joker arrives for his trial though, he's killed by a new superhero called Magog. But then, Magog ends up being acquitted of his charges, which just makes Superman appalled, because, you know, the public is embracing a killer. But I mean, like, let's be honest, they do that anyway. Already disheartened by the death of Lois Lane, Kal-El abandons his life as Superman and retreats to the Fortress of Solitude, where he spends the next decade. Superman eventually returns to reform the Justice League with the goal of capturing heroes who followed Magog's example and took to killing, which results in many a battle and a nuke targeted towards metahuman genes. But in the end, Superman starts dating Wonder Woman and they end up expecting a child. Hopefully Joker doesn't make you think you're fighting Doomsday. Finally, in at number 1, Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan is considered the most powerful superhero in comics because he possesses basically unlimited powers. He debuted in the graphic novel limited series of Watchmen, published in 1986 and 1987, but Manhattan later on became a major player in the DC universe. He was revealed to be responsible for the Flashpoint event, which ended up creating the New 52 timeline in the process, something that removed 10 years of history of DC characters, and he did it on his own. So how could I not include Dr. Manhattan on this list when the Watchmen comic is very dystopian? The dystopia in Watchmen is caused by superheroes who thought that they could save the world but ended up leaving it hollow and broken. And Ozymandias makes another dystopia on top of that, thanks to him thinking that the only way to fix the world would be to destroy it. I still don't get this thought process, but I also totally get this thought process. Like, thinking that the world needs a reset, I understand, but actually trying to reset it is something else entirely.
Number 10, Ultimate Deadpool. While the Ultimate timeline is said to be parallel to the 616 main continuity timeline, technically the Ultimate continuity of Earth 1610 is still set in the future by comparison. The Ultimate line was actually meant to shake things up, chiefly by giving stories a more updated and modern setting. That was one of the major ways it differed, as its continuity didn't extend back to the 1960s and further back beyond that. Add in the fact that the Ultimate version of Deadpool is later revealed to be a cyborg, having fully converted to match their fellow Reaver brethren, and you have a pretty futuristic version of Deadpool here. Basically, evil robot Deadpool in this universe. Number 9, Horsemen of Apocalypse. In this alternate reality of Earth 16558, Deadpool was chosen to become a Horseman of Apocalypse. Here, Deadpool was ordered to join the rest of the Horsemen in defeating and destroying the young X-Men who were trespassers in their home of Omega World, and retrieving the Ark that they carried with them, which held within it hundreds of mutant embryos. In this reality, many of Apocalypse's choices for his Horsemen are actually not really mutant in origin. Also on this deadly team is Venom and Moon Knight. Later, Colossus, who attempts to buy time for the young X-Men, is also recruited into their ranks, being the only technical mutant other than Apocalypse on the team. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Deadpool lists or more future alternate versions lists, be sure to let us know by clicking that like and commenting below. Also, if you haven't already, go follow us on Facebook. We got some cool stuff for you over there. Number 8, Deadman Wade. Deadman Wade appears in the Age of Apocalypse alternate future reality. Here, Apocalypse succeeds in taking over the world, and Deadpool is recruited into becoming one of his Pale Riders. In this reality, Deadpool is not much of a jokester, but instead is extremely sad and quite depressed. As a Pale Rider, he is constantly mistreated by Danny Moonstar, his teammate, who is also part of the Pale Riders in this reality. Deadpool in this reality is rapidly decaying, which causes him to feel immense pain, almost all the time. In the end, he is killed by Nightcrawler, who teleports his head away from his body to do so. Deadman Wade, however, would later be resurrected and would go on to join the evil Deadpool Corps, appearing alongside them in the series Deadpool Kills Deadpool. Number 7, Agent Deadpool. This Deadpool is never really given a name like most alternates who appear as a member of the evil Deadpool Corps. However, he does seem to have some pretty fancy tech and the ability to body slide, and I would assume potentially time slide. He appears in Deadpool Kills Deadpool, a series by Cullen Bunn where Dreadpool seeks to create his own team of evil Deadpools so that he might use them to wipe out every Deadpool in the Marvel multiverse. multiverse. Dreadpool, by the way, is the same version of Deadpool known for killing the entire Marvel universe. Agent Deadpool, as I've chosen to call him, is one of Dreadpool's agents who appears in the first issue of Deadpool Kills Deadpool. He takes out Headpool, Golden Age Deadpool, and sadly, Dogpool, before Deadpool of the main reality of Earth 616 avenges their deaths by killing Agent Deadpool in turn, using Agent Deadpool's own anti-regeneration or anti-Deadpool ray. Number 6. Eternity Deadpool. This Deadpool only makes a brief appearance in Doom War issue number 5. Here Deadpool is recruited into a mission to help retrieve the 10,000 tons of vibranium that Dr. Doom stole from Wakanda. When Deadpool passed through the Nowhere Room, he's turned temporarily into a kind of a splat of goo and organs. I say temporarily because, well, he's Deadpool, so he does get better because he got that healing factor. And quite quickly too, I will say. During this time, however, we also get a glimpse into multiple alternate versions of Deadpool from the multiverse, one of which happens to be a version in which Deadpool goes on to become the new Eternity.
Number 5. Pappy Banner. And from happiness back to tears again. Ready to talk about Old Man Logan? Yet again? Good. Basically, in this dystopian future where the villains all banded together to take out all of the heroes, Wolverine has become a farmer, a simple man trying to just make ends meet and keep his family alive. But the main antagonist in this tale is the Hulk gang, made up of the incestuous children and grandchildren of Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk, and what he claims was his cousin Jennifer Walters, as in She-Hulk. This gang of horrible Hulks was led by none other than the one true Pappy Banner himself. Pappy Banner doesn't need to change his form to access the powers of the Hulk. In the fight between Old Man Logan and Pappy Banner, this regular human Bruce Banner was tossing cows and throwing punches that sent Logan flying. But when he did transform, he grew to a massive, overweight, maniacally twisted version of the Hulk that ate Old Man Logan whole. Well, until Logan healed up and just burst out of the Hulk's stomach, so that's nice. Number 4. Hulk The End. The End series chronicles the last days of various characters in the Marvel Universe. For a lot of doomsday type stories, it often ends in the Earth being destroyed in a nuclear war. But what remains after that? Well, basically, the Hulk remains. As the only human left on planet Earth, Bruce Banner wanders the wastes in an eternal struggle with himself, as in an eternal struggle with the Hulk. Basically, Bruce has seen the deaths of all those he loved, all those he cared about. There's nothing left in this world for him, and he would prefer to just pass on. But no matter what he does, the Hulk does not let him. Speaking of the big green Goliath, he thinks Banner's will to pass away is a puny human thought, and he wants to be the strongest there is and to just be left alone. The two of them have a huge internal falling out. Eventually, Bruce has a heart attack, and while Hulk himself goes on to survive somehow, he now realizes just how alone he really is. Damn. Number 3. Breaker of Worlds. The Breaker of Worlds Hulk first appeared in a kind of side story within the Immortal Hulk storyline. In an alternate timeline, the Immortal Hulk becomes possessed by the One Below All, who went rampaging until the end of time, and the end of this iteration of the multiverse. He has destroyed everything, literally everything. He has defeated Franklin Richards, Galactus, all the cosmic entities, and he's shattered planets and crushed stars with his bare hands. The story itself follows an alien that had explored out trying to find out if anything was left in the universe, and there wasn't. This alien is living in the 9th cosmos, meaning the 9th version of the multiverse after the Immortal Hulk / the One Below All destroyed the last version. This new 9th multiverse is in tatters though. The One Below All Hulk has consumed the souls of every being he has destroyed, bolstering his own power enough so that he is planet-sized and just flies around like a living curse, ending all things in existence until there is nothing left. Ever. Luckily, the alien sent a warning far into the past to the present time. The Breaker of Worlds is what happens when the One Below All wins, and it's not good. Coming in at number 2 is Space Punisher Hulk. This version of the Hulk in the really awesome Space Punisher story is a 4-armed, 30-foot tall murderous monstrosity. He completely took out the Fantastic Four, he bit Sabretooth in half, took off Deadpool's head and threw him out into space, and he completely decimated a group of 6 Watchers, as in the race that Uatu the Watcher is a part of. Now if you don't know, the Watchers are sort of on par in power to Galactus, so yes, this is pretty impressive. The future space version of the Hulk is more like an exoskeleton skeleton, with Bruce Banner contained within the Hulk's chest, but they are still separate entities, allowing Punisher to end the life of Bruce Banner, which in turn allows the Hulk to just jump off into space and leave everyone alone. It's intense, it's really weird, it's extremely brutal as you'd expect from a Punisher story, and we love it. And coming in at number 1 is Maestro. If we are talking about alternate future versions of the Hulk, you'd be just a big ol' silly Billy if you thought we weren't gonna talk about the evil ruler of dystopia, the possible future version of the Hulk, Maestro. Maestro is the far future ruler of a megacity that rose up after the events of a nuclear war. After being exposed to so much extra radiation, he gained extra strength and over time became more and more intelligent. He had powered up enough to be double the strength of the base Hulk and just as smart as Bruce Banner, while also becoming nefariously evil. Earth 616 Hulk ends up traveling forward in time to stop Maestro, which proves to be a much more difficult task than he initially imagined. Hulk's experience with Maestro gave Hulk nightmares of what he could become for years and years and years to come into the future.
Number 10. What If Sorcerer Supreme? In the What If series, we got an issue that explored the idea of what would happen if Tony Stark became Sorcerer Supreme in place of Stephen Strange, and was forced to do battle with the Dread Lord of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu. Oddly enough, this isn't the only alternate future where Tony ends up as Sorcerer Supreme. Maybe we'll talk about that later. It's actually just one of them. Here, both Stark and Strange are in a car accident together, which robs Stephen of his ability to use his hands as a surgeon. Tony swears to fix Stephen's hands, and the two set out on a quest, which sets Stark down a path to meeting and training with the Ancient One, instead of Stephen doing that. After becoming the Ancient One's disciple and defeating the evil Baron Mordo, Stark becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme and is forced to do battle with Dormammu, who plans on, of course, invading Earth. Stark makes for himself a suit of armor to help him defeat Dormammu, which combines both Tony's knowledge of technology and the mystic arts. Number 9. Iron Man 2020. Iron Man 2020 is both an event and a character. The editorial name was given to a different Iron Man, Arno Stark. Arno Stark, aka Iron Man 2020, was Tony's secret brother and the natural-born heir of the Stark family. Whereas it was later revealed that Tony was actually adopted to kind of help cover up what had really happened with Arno and to basically protect the firstborn Stark. Arno would end up taking up the mantle of Iron Man in the future year of 2020. Although now that would actually be the past, because it's 2022 at the time of this recording, and at the time of the event it was the present because it was 2020. The original Iron Man 2020 comic was actually published in the 90s, so at the time 2020 was very much in the future. So for those of you trying to tell me 2020 is the past, I know, but at the time, it's the future. In the event Iron Man 2020, Arno takes up his brother's mantle as he fights against the uprising of machines. Tony at the time felt he was more machine than man, and Arno basically uses this revelation of Tony's to discredit him, taking his place and becoming Iron Man in his stead. In the end, Arno would basically be driven mad while trying to save humans from machines by attempting to take control of all life, both organic and AI, in order to protect them. Don't worry though, because Tony would defeat Arno and kind of put him in a dream state to make him hopefully be happy until he wakes up and realizes all of the things he thinks he's been living have been a lie, which will probably not be good. I don't think that's happened yet though. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you are enjoying our content here, why not head on over to Facebook and follow us there. We have lots of bonus content coming your way, giveaways and other good stuff, so go on over there and click that follow button. Number 8. Darkhold Iron Man. The Darkhold Iron Man tale gives us a glimpse into a dark alternate future for our hero. In this reality, when Tony Stark first makes the Iron Man suit, something in his programming basically goes wrong. This causes the suit to remove Tony's skin when it is put on and then removed. Tony learns this the hard way. While working on the suit to try and fix this issue, he feels a compulsion to put it on as though the suit is calling to him. And seemingly, without thinking, he finds himself doing so, eventually even putting on the helmet. The Iron Man suit works to remove Tony's skin and then eventually breaks down his skull and his bones, merging with him fully so that the suit can never actually be removed without killing Tony, because now they're kind of one being. But why would he ever want to remove this suit? Driven insane, in the end Tony Stark believes that the Iron Man suit is actually the way of the future and offers one to every human, turning the population into a bunch of techno-organic iron suit human hybrid monster things permanently, including his friends and his loved ones who he also forces into suits. Ugh. Earth, which would be really terrible because they know what's gonna happen. At least those people are unsuspecting and they're just like, ah, free iron suit, that sounds lovely. Let me run into this and see what happens. Better or worse, if you see it coming or if you're surprised by it. I don't know. I feel like if you see it coming, it's worse in my mind. Number 7. Earth 928 Iron Man. Earth 928 is widely accepted as the main continuity for Earth 2099. This is the same one that Miguel O'Hara, the main Miguel anyways, aka Spider-Man 2099, hails from. The sad reality is that in this continuity, there isn't really a future Iron Man to speak of. What we do learn about Tony Stark's future here is that the Doom of 2099 has dealt with Stark technology before, and that there is basically no alternate Iron Man within scanning distance of Flipside. Flipside appears in Spider-Man 2099, issue number 29, from the 90s, and appears to be scanning for copies of heroes of old so that it can basically copy their traits and abilities, adopting them to become a copy of them itself. Instead of running into any Earth 928 Iron Man though, Flipside ends up running into Miguel and becomes a copycat of Spider-Man 2099 instead. So like I said, as far as we know, there is no Iron Man 2099 in the main 2099 reality. There was a future for Tony, but I don't really know about it. We just know that he was there until he wasn't. Number 6. Stark Fujikawa. While Iron Man of Earth 928 appears to be dead, there is also the existence in this future of the Stark Fujikawa organization, one of the main corporations that rules over the future Earth, along with such powerful companies as Alchemex. While Tony Stark is not among the powerful heads of the company and is not the future CEO, presumed to be dead on Earth 928, in the alternate 2099 future reality of Earth 96099, Iron Man's likeness, at least, does live on. In this reality, Iron Man's likeness is used in advertising for the Stark Fujikawa organization, implying that Tony's future was somewhat tied to the company. At least, like I said, in this alternate 2099 reality, which isn't the main 2099 reality, but yeah, there are lots of alternate 2099 timelines. It's confusing. Although once again, we still don't really know the fate of Tony Stark even here, where his name and likeness still seem to reappear, but the rest is a mystery.
Number 5. Maestro. In Avengers Endgame, we cut to 5 years in the future. Hulk is now smart, he's taking selfies, he's dabbing, he's hanging out with the team, but he's embarrassed by his past smashy version of himself in 2012's Avengers. We love growth, we love seeing a character change, but what if the Hulk had lived even longer on this planet? Well, that's where we get into the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect storyline. As the title suggests, the future is not so bright here. There are no flying cars, there's actually nothing really there. It's not a paradise at all. When we see the future Earth 9200, we're seeing a Hulk 100 years in the future as well. We find him after a nuclear war put the planet close to extinction. So the Hulk, or rather the Maestro, was older, stronger, and scarier looking, all because he'd been absorbing all this nuclear radiation from the Earth. He became even more unstoppable and, of course, just super jaded, just super evil. He had to face a future version of Rick Jones at one point, and then he ended up losing a battle to said Smart Hulk as well. I wouldn't want to face any version of the Hulk at any time. I don't want to fight Smart Hulk, War Hulk, Horseman Hulk, or even Bruce Banner. I don't want to fight the scientist Bruce Banner. Number 4. Time Trapper. First appearing in Adventure Comics 317, Time Trapper was introduced to readers as a warlord in the far future who prevents the Legion of Superheroes from traveling into their future with this iron curtain of time. The Time Trapper's main goal basically was to steal this weapon that could absorb every energy in the universe, just this Dyson vacuum full of energy called the Concentrator. Now the team caught wind of this Time Trapper when they could no longer jump more than 30 days in the future. They're like, okay, something's up, there's some higher powers preventing us from being badass. He resides comfortably at the end of time, accompanied by his servants, the Glorith of Baldur. Time Trapper can age anybody he wants, either a couple years or straight to the ashes and bones part. In Action Comics 385, Time Trapper created a temporal force barrier in order to seal a time-traveling Superman away from the 20th century. He's that powerful. Number 3, Bishop. Lucas Bishop is a time traveler from a dystopian future, and his goal is to travel back in time to stop this unknown factor amongst the X-Men. Okay, so he comes from this dark future and he goes back in time to change it because something bad happens. There's some bad mutant, okay? But this happens where most of the mutant population is depowered by the Scarlet Witch, and then this one child, Hope Summers, was born, the first mutant born since M-Day. Well, it turns out that this kid is the reason Bishop is going back in time in the first place. This kid would end up taking millions of lives in the 6-second war. So Bishop thinks the only way to save his future is to travel back in time and take out Hope Summers as a child, but he fails fails at taking out Hope, but he does take down Cable, creating this new future where Cable is remembered as a hero for protecting the child, and Bishop was actually remembered as the villain. So he was the villain in his own story, and he didn't even know it. Number 2, Kronos. If you do the crime, you're doing the time. But if you have enough time, you can plan said crime out in detail, and then maybe you just won't get caught next time. David Clinton first entered DC Comics with the Atom issue 3. He's mainly a villain for Ray Palmer, aka the Atom. Now he was a criminal his entire life, and finally, when he was arrested, he was thrown in the slammer, where he had time to think about everything that he's done, all the reasons why he got caught, why his plans didn't work. But maybe he had a bit too much time. He reflected on his past crimes and what he would have done differently if he had planned it better, and then he used his skills and obsessions with timepieces to work non-stop in the prison workshop, where he learned about clocks, time, the mechanisms within. He learned about everything. So when his sentence was finally up, he was released and then became a time-traveling villain. He used all these time-inspired weapons, like an exploding hourglass, a wristwatch with blades instead of hands, and a device that could slow time down. Going by the new name Kronos, in the DC animated universe, Kronos used these devices to go back in time and steal rare relics from the past. At one point, he actually tried stealing a utility belt from the Justice League's watchtower, but when he was interrupted, he made a break for it through the time vortex, and Green Lantern, Batman, and Wonder Woman followed him back. Not this time, Kronos. Literally, not this time. Maybe the next one. And finally, number 1, Kang. Kang the Conqueror. As Loki gets closer to wrapping up, we're starting to see some higher powers at play here. The Time Lords were just androids. Loki was banished to a realm full of other Lokis. We're not really sure who's calling the shots yet, but signs are pointing to Kang. Jonathan Majors is already set to play the time-traveling villain in the next Ant-Man film, so let's do a quick refresh on him. Kang the Conqueror, aka Nathaniel Richards, made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964. Kang has seen many centuries. He can travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that could take on any superhero from any timeline that he chooses. He's super powerful, and it sure helps when he travels with armies. That often does a trick. So he discovered time travel tech from the 31st century developed by Dr. Doom, and being a descendant of Reed Richards with that brain power, he figured out a way to make it work to his advantage. He traveled back in time initially to become Pharaoh Rama-Tut, but once he returned to his 31st century, it was now just a wasteland. So he figured, okay, now I'm going to go all the way back and just rule Earth to prevent said destruction from happening. I feel like Kang is one episode away. We're so close. I can feel it in my soul.
And 10, Spider-Man Reign. I love talking about Spider-Man Reign because honestly, it's pretty damn ridiculous. Spider-Man Reign was Marvel's counter to the Dark Knight Returns storyline from DC. Set 30 years in the future, Peter has retired and Mary Jane is dead. The mayor of New York has taken control of the cities in more ways than just being the mayor, and when JJJ gets Spider-Man back, the mayor releases the Sinister Six from prison, including versions of Electro, Mysterio, Kraven, Sandman, Scorpion, and Hydro Man, as well as a dead Doc Ock tentacle who saves Peter's life after his mask was ripped off in front of a crowd. Doc Ock's final command to his tentacles was to show Peter 3 grave markers, those of Mary Jane, May Parker, and Ben Parker. After being buried in Mary Jane's coffin by Octopus's tentacle and coming face to face with and conquering his inner demons, Peter emerges in his famous red and blue suit, which he had secretly buried with her. Cause yeah. It's also revealed that the mayor, Edward Sachs, is actually Venom, who plans to turn all of New York into an army of symbiotes. But the worst part is when it's revealed that MJ died because of Peter's radioactive swimmers. I guess having a kid with a superhero is a kinda risky business. Give me that episode of Sex Sent Me to the ER. Oh man. In at 9, The Dark Knight Returns. As you can expect when Batman has to, return, Batman was retired and Gotham City had become a haven for all sorts of violent gangs. But before you can say why so serious, the man is back in action and gets yet another new Robin to help clean up the streets of his city. But I know what you're thinking. Batman cannot be street sweeper certified, and you're probably right. But what I mean is he's back to fighting crime. But of course, no alternate universe dystopian Batman story would be complete without a take on the Joker, who still represents the same anarchy threatening to destroy society. I think he's trying to fix it. On the other side though is Superman, a tool of the authoritarian government who wants Batman out of the picture. And as always, it's up to Bruce to find the perfect balance between law and order. Perfectly balanced as all things should be. I love when the superheroes are old though and still try to fight crime. Like I just picture my great-grandfather like trying to kick like some thug who's like at his nursing home trying to take his shampoo. Just, yeah. That's what I imagine. And at 8, The Ray. Set on an Earth where Germany won World War II, it can make things pretty clear when you're talking about a dystopia. The Ray is a member of the resistance fighting against the German soldiers, and is the primary protagonist of Freedom Fighters The Ray, which is an animated series set in the Arrowverse. The Ray in the crossover at least is shown to be quite powerful, being able to take down Red Tornado from what I can remember. This dude also has like a really cool suit, and in the show is either married to or dating Captain Cold, which is sweet. He gained his powers after the original Ray died in front of him, and he was also included in the comic adaptation of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, which was already adapted from the original comic event, but this one is based off the CW with Felicity and other people. However, the Ray was destroyed along with his Earth in the TV version of the crossover, but in the comics he was killed along with Felicity and Nyssa. This guy has some mad superpowers though, like super strength, flight, light energy blasts, light speed, invisibility, photokinesis allowing him to make solid light constructs, bioluminescence, and that's not even the whole list. Okay, it's freaking nuts, man. And at 7, Zombie Hulk. Marvel Zombies is probably one of the most accessible alternate futures in Marvel Comics, according to multiple people. And I don't think that we need much of an explanation here as to why Zombie Hulk would be scary powerful. Hulk is already a brute with anger issues, but this story takes place in an alternate version of the Marvel Universe called Earth 2149, where all superpowered beings became infected by an extraterrestrial virus which transformed them into zombies. So the Hulk, who already had a passion for smashing, is now hungry for human flesh. Do you see where I'm going with this? On the wiki, his abilities are listed as genius level intellect, superhuman strength, superhuman speed, master combatant, and cosmic powers from when he ate the Silver Surfer and Galactus. But his hobbies also include devouring living flesh, which sounds like the worst dating profile ever, or the best. They even have a section for crimes he's committed, like genocide, cannibalism, and more. I wish they had that section on Tinder. That'd make things interesting. And at 6, Injustice Flash. But what about a world where Superman was tricked into killing Lois Lane and his unborn son by the Joker who made him hallucinate fighting Doomsday, but then also nukes Metropolis? That's a thing that happened and it was absolutely brutal. So Superman ends up killing the Joker and then gets a taste for it, basically becoming a dictator of the world and then turning it into a dystopia where his word is law. Batman among others obviously fight it, but one of the superheroes who joins Superman is actually the Flash, who is still super fast, but now he works for a totalitarian regime. He does end up defecting, but let's be honest, he's more powerful when he's working with Superman because everyone ends up fearing him. He could shove a vibrating hand through your chest faster than you could say your own name. Just the thought of Superman having a speedster in his corner is enough to make your spine shiver.
At number 5, we have Superman from the House of L Future State storyline. This version of the hero has the exact same backstory that we're used to, being the last son of Krypton, all that jazz. But in this continuation, Superman is captured and has his powers stripped after being stabbed with kryptonite. He's then trapped by Mongol in one of his war worlds and forced to fight in a gladiatorial arena. Every time he dies, Mongol brings him back to life and forces him to fight again. Meanwhile, in the 30th century, a group of Superman's descendants create a new version of the House of L and rule over the cosmos, believing Superman has always been nothing but a myth. It's sort of a sad story in reality, but don't worry, Superman does make a comeback in the end after his time as a gladiator. At number 4, we have the Superman from Superman vs. Terminator. This one is pretty self-explanatory, and it's not considered to be an official part of the DC canon as you can imagine. But it's still one of the cooler iterations of Superman, all things considered. Created by Alan Grant and Steve Pugh over at Dark Horse Comics, Superman vs. the Terminator, Death to the Future, is just a fun read. When Skynet sends Terminators to find a young man named Connor in Metropolis, they're met with resistance they don't quite expect when none other than Superman shows up. The art style and storytelling matches up pretty darn well with the DC Comics if you ask me, and I just felt like this version of the hero needed some love due to how unique his circumstances are. At number 3, we have 6th Dimension Superman. Living in what appears to be a more advanced future, we're introduced to an older Justice League that's initially thought to be the Prime Earth Justice League, which seems plausible at first due to the way that they're dressed among a few other things, but eventually we realize that it's just a futuristic version of the current Justice League. And with the team still being led by Superman, we assume that they've been continuing on with their typical crime-fighting business, but there's another twist that's soon revealed, which is that Superman is actually World Forger masquerading as the Kryptonian. The real future Superman's whereabouts are unknown at the time, but World Forger looks and acts just like the real Superman, so I felt that he belonged on the list. Okay, fine, I mainly included him because of his cool costume design, but even in his short 10-issue run during Justice League Volume 4, he appears to be about as powerful as an aging, more wise, and practiced Superman might be. At number 2, we have Justice Lord Superman from Justice League Beyond. In this alternate future, Lex Luthor is President of the United States, and Superman is, at first, pretty much the same as the one we know. But when President Luthor executes the Flash, Superman storms the White House and confronts him. But after Luthor delivers this manipulative speech saying Superman has helped him become evil and is a big important counterpart to all his evil deeds, Superman is pushed over the edge and executes the president. This comes as a shock to Superman's allies, but it sets a new precedent for this futuristic team known as the Justice Lords. And moving forward, Justice Lord Superman continues to deal with criminals by lobotomizing them with his laser vision. This storyline actually feels like a combination between Injustice and The Dark Knight Rises, in that there's a morally questionable team being led by a twisted version of Superman, and then Batman decides he needs to stand up against Superman's destructive ways, except in this case, it all happens sometime in the distant future, fitting it nicely at the top of this list. At number 1, we have John Kent from Future State. This is a fun one. A younger version of the hero who is the offspring of Superman and Lois Lane. The Future State event was released in 2021 and looked at what a potential future for the DC universe would and could look like. And alongside a handful of other new characters taking on the mantles of notable DC heroes, John Kent takes on the Superman mantle. There isn't much known about him quite yet, but at first glance he appears to have a more personal disposition. Possibly his half-human heritage gives him a bit more of an approachable energy, almost like Invincible. I'm looking forward to seeing how far John Kent goes in the comics and how they will develop a canonized story of how he ends up taking over for his father in the long run.